After getting isekai'd by Truck Kun, he was reincarnated in another world. He pretended to be a background character, but in reality, he was the strongest in the world and had his own team of hot waifus who wants to serve him and would do anything for him. But accidentally, he ended up making every hot girl in school fall for him. This all began with Akane Nishino waking up late after having a really bad dream. She quickly shakes off the nightmare, jumps in the shower, and gets ready to leave for the day. But just as she's about to step out the door, she suddenly remembers how paparazzi once swarmed her, taking pictures. That memory almost sends her into a panic. Luckily, her driver calls out her name just in time, pulling her back to reality. She takes a deep breath, pulls herself together, and heads to school. When Nishino arrives at school, everyone is staring at her with admiration. It's like she's the school's superstar. She's beautiful, super smart, and used to be a famous actress and idol. All the students want to be her friend, and they treat her like she's a celebrity. As she walks to her locker, she spots the one person she really can't stand, Minoru Kageno. He's just a regular guy, nothing special about him, and what bugs her the most is that he's the only one who doesn't seem to care about her at all. He can't even remember her name, which drives her nuts. Nishino keeps trying to get his attention, hoping he'll finally remember her like everyone else does. This time, she says hi to him, and he responds, but calls her Nishimura, totally getting her name wrong again. Nishino freezes, forcing a sarcastic smile while feeling super mad inside. It's not just that he messed up her name again, but it's also how he acts like she doesn't even exist, while everyone else can't stop looking at her. It's like she's invisible to him, and that only makes her hate him more. She corrects him for what feels like the millionth time, but he just mutters something under his breath, calling her an NPC. She's confused and asks what he means, and Kageno explains that in his mind, he creates main characters, and everyone else is just background noise, NPCs, and she's one of them. Nishino is stunned, but before she can say anything back, he messes up her name again in a silly way and walks off to class. In class, the other students are totally into Nishino, asking her all kinds of questions about her upcoming return to acting. She's set to star in a popular show next Monday. She explains how she had to quit acting after a huge scandal back in middle school that made a lot of people hate her. Ever since then, she's been hiding her true self, pretending to be someone she's not until things cooled down. Now that she's in high school, she feels like she can finally be herself again. Nishino plays the role of the teacher's pet and the most popular girl in class to make sure everyone likes her and to avoid making any enemies. She even stays late after school to help the teacher prepare for the next day. But one day, after staying late, she finds out her driver was attacked by some thugs, so she has to walk home alone. On her way, those same thugs who attacked her driver start following her and eventually kidnap her. They plan to hold her for ransom, demanding a ton of money from her father. As Nishino is being taken away, she notices someone watching from a distance, but it's too dark to see who it is before the thugs cover her face. Nishino wakes up in a creepy warehouse, terrified as the thugs talk about what they'll do if her father doesn't pay up. Meanwhile, Kageno is outside, using a mirror to peek inside and check out the situation. After sizing up what's going on, he changes into his secret identity before making his move. The thugs mention this is the second time Nishino has been kidnapped. The first time was by a crazy stalker, but this time it's because of her father's enemies. One of the ugly bastards tries to destroy her sweet plot, but before he can do anything, Kageno crashes through the roof, revealing himself as a slick, rough fighter. One of the thugs thinks it's a joke and pulls out a gun, but Kageno quickly disarms him, leaving everyone shocked. He makes fun of the thug's lack of skill and takes him out fast. The other thug realizes Kageno isn't just some ordinary fighter, he's an ex-military man who's been looking for a challenge. The thug pulls out a knife and manages to get a few hits on Kageno, but it's nothing he can't handle. Kageno then pulls out his favorite weapon, a crowbar, and warns the thug about how useful it is. The thug tries to overpower Kageno with his strength, but Kageno quickly turns the tables, revealing that he's known as the Berserker, a name that scares all the biker gangs. Kageno breaks the thug's legs and beats him up, freeing Nishino. But just as fast as he showed up, Kageno disappears into the night. Later, Nishino's father arrives, using his connections to cover up what happened so she can continue her acting career without any issues. But Nishino's biggest regret is not finding out who the stylish fighter that saved her really was. The next day at school, she greets Kageno again, hoping he'll remember her name. This time, he actually calls her by her real name, shocking her. When Kageno looks into her eyes this time, it feels different, like he's really seeing her, and she realizes that maybe Kageno is hiding behind a mask too, just like her. But before she can ask him anything more, Kageno has hugged Truck-kun, ending his life in the real world. Kageno then finds himself in a totally different world, where he starts explaining a bit about himself. Like most boys, he always wanted to be a hero, but unlike most, he was dead serious about it. In the real world, he was just an average, unnoticed background character at school, but behind the scenes, he was an amazing fighter who trained really hard. Yet, it still wasn't enough for him. Kageno's desire to be a hero grew stronger as he realized how weak humans really are. No matter how strong you are, whether you're a mixed martial arts master or a boxing champion, you're still just a human. And if something like a nuclear explosion happens, you'd be wiped out like everyone else. Kageno couldn't accept that fate. He wanted to be the one who could never be stopped, the one they'd call the Eminence Shadow. He became a powerful being in this new world, with a group of strong girls by his side. But the only way to become this hero was by being reborn into this other world, which happened after the truck incident. In this new life, Kageno, now known as Cid Kagenou, forms a secret underground group called the Shadows. But before we dive into how he became so powerful in this magical world, we're taken back to a flashback. After being reborn, Cid woke up as the son of Baron and Lady Kageno, aristocrats living in the kingdom of Midgar. The Kageno family is known for producing dark knights, warriors who can enhance their abilities with magic. His parents have high hopes for their children, especially his older sister, Claire Kageno, who has amazing talent. Cid grew up in his sister's shadow, but secretly, he had his own double life at night, hunting down bandits. After winning a fight with his slime sword and bodysuit, he finds a strange creature locked in a cage. Curious, Cid takes it home to experiment on it. After a month of trial and error, the creature transforms into a beautiful elven girl. Before she can see him, Cid pretends to be cool, claiming he broke a curse on her and the descendants of heroes. He pulls out a fictional book about a demon named Diablo and makes up a story about 3 heroes who defeated Diablo, but not before he cursed them. Cid also tells her that the cult of Diablos is planning to bring their boss back to life, and that she was a victim of this. He introduces himself as Shadow and asks the girl to join him in his mission to take down the cult. Even though he made it all up, she agrees to join his organization, the Shadow Garden, becoming his second in command and taking the name Alpha. 3 years go by, and Cid, now 13 years old, is seen sparring with Claire. Even though he could easily beat her, he holds back, and she ends up sending him flying. In this world, nobles have to go to the Midgar Royal Spellsword Academy for Dark Knights when they turn 15. But when the day for Claire's departure comes, she goes missing, and her room is left in a mess. Meanwhile, another elven girl named Beta, the first member recruited by Alpha, is introduced. She's just one of many members in the Shadow Garden. Alpha and the others are busy finding leads on Claire's location. Interestingly, Cid's made-up story about the cult of Diablos turns out to be real. Beta believes Claire was targeted because the cult thinks she's a descendant of the heroes. She lays out a map of the enemy's hideouts, but they still need to figure out where Claire is being held. Cid then throws a slime knife at the map, revealing Claire's location. Cid orders Beta to gather the Shadow Garden's elite members, known as the 7 Shadows. At the same time, Count Grease, a prominent figure from the cult of Diablo, sneers at Claire, who is trapped by chains that suppress her magic. Unable to fight back fully, Claire dodges his strikes with remarkable agility. Grease comments on her improved combat skills, assuming that Baron Kageno was behind her progress. Claire, however, snaps back, correcting him by saying that it was actually her brother, Cid, who helped her get stronger. When Grease starts to show interest in Cid, Claire's anger flares up. She threatens him, warning that if he ever tries to harm her brother, he'll regret it. Ignoring the pain from her wounds, she lunges at him, but Grease quickly overpowers her, knocking her unconscious before she can continue the fight, but is then alerted that intruders are nearby. To his shock, all his men have been defeated by the Shadows. Grease tries to fight Alpha, but he's way out of his league. Desperate, he takes a red pill that boosts his power and manages to push Alpha back a little. But when he realizes he's still outnumbered, he tries to escape, only to bump into Cid. Cid easily blocks his attack and starts lecturing him about proper sword techniques before finishing him off. Afterward, Cid takes Grease's locket, which has a picture of him and his daughter. Claire is returned home safely, but she's still upset and has to leave for the royal capital. Later that night, Cid meets with the 7 Shadows to discuss their next mission. However, they tell him they're leaving to take down the cult of Diablos on a bigger scale. Cid lets them go, thinking they've simply grown tired of playing their roles. 2 years later, Cid goes to the same school as his sister. Like always, he sticks to his low-key, background character routine. He picks Skell and Poe as his friends, two guys who are at the bottom of the noble rankings. On their way to school, Skell and Poe remind Cid about the embarrassing punishment he has to face for getting the lowest score on a test. He has to confess his love to the most popular girl on campus and get totally rejected in front of everyone. When they get to the academy, they see Princess Alexia Midgar, who's super popular, rejecting some other guy's confession. Before the day ends, Cid starts acting like his usual background character self, being all shy and nervous around Alexia while Skell and Poe watch from the sidelines. Cid confesses to Alexia, fully expecting her to turn him down in front of everyone. But instead of rejecting him, she shocks him by accepting. The news spreads fast, and now everyone can't imagine how the he is hottest girl in class. During lunch, Alexia joins Cid and his friends at their table in the cafeteria. Since they're sitting with a princess, they get served a bunch of extra food. Cid, trying to gross Alexia out so she'll dump him, eats as much food as he can as fast as he can. Instead of being disgusted, Alexia just smiles at him. Later, their sword instructor, Griffey Zenon, introduces Cid to the class as a new member of Section 1. All because Alexia helped him move up from the lowest section. Afterward, Cid and Alexia have a sparring match, and Cid notices that her sword skills aren't that great. He finds her style kind of boring. On the other hand, Alexia isn't impressed with Cid's skills either, and she starts getting annoyed because he reminds her of herself. Just when they finish training, Zenon shows up, revealing that he's actually Alexia's fiancé. Later that day, Cid and Alexia have a conversation about their fake relationship. Cid realizes that Alexia picked him as her fake boyfriend because she thinks he's easy to control since he's a low-ranking noble. She plans to keep pretending to date him until Zenon calls off their engagement. At first, Cid doesn't want to get involved in her drama, but when Alexia throws him a gold coin, he quickly changes his mind. He grabs the coin, and the deal is sealed. As days go by, their fake relationship keeps going, and it starts driving the other students crazy, especially the guys. But Zenon doesn't seem to care about it at all. 2 weeks into their fake relationship, while riding a train together, Alexia opens up to Cid. She tells him she's always felt like she's chasing after her sister, Iris, who is the pride of their family because she's such a strong fighter. No matter how hard Alexia tries, she can't catch up to Iris. To make her feel better, Cid tells Alexia that he actually likes her sword skills. But Alexia just brushes it off, saying her sister told her the same thing after she lost in a tournament. Feeling down, Alexia draws her sword, but before things get worse, the train stops, and she leaves. Cid figures their fake relationship is probably over now. The next day, Zenon and his men confront Cid. Apparently, Alexia didn't come back to her dorm last night, and since Cid was the last person seen with her, they accuse him of kidnapping her. Surrounded by knights, Cid has no choice but to surrender. Meanwhile, Alexia wakes up in a dark, creepy cell, chained up by magic. She notices a weird female monster in the cell next to hers. Soon, a crazy doctor shows up, all excited about using Alexia's royal blood. Barely able to keep her cool, Alexia asks why he wants her blood, and the doctor explains that she has the kind of blood needed to bring their master back to life. Back with Cid, he's being tortured during his interrogation, but he pretends to be in a lot more pain than he actually is to avoid standing out too much. Meanwhile, Zenon meets with Iris, feeling bad for not protecting Alexia. Zenon tells Iris that even though all the clues point to Cid, there's no way Cid could have beaten Alexia. Iris orders Cid's release, but she still plans to keep an eye on him. At the same time, Claire, causing a fuss outside, is restrained but demands to meet the knights over her brother's unfair arrest. The student council president, Rose, steps in to stop her. After he's let go, a badly beaten Cid heads back to his dorm, but he's being followed. Alpha, one of his trusted allies, steps in and helps him escape. Inside his room, Alpha fills him in on what's going on. She tells him that they're still collecting information on the cult that kidnapped Alexia, and that their group is getting stronger. Cid is glad to hear it and is happy that the girls in his organization still visit him sometimes. Alpha then explains that Alexia was taken because of her royal blood. She even offers to take care of the knights who tortured Cid, but he tells her not to bother since they were just doing their jobs. Later that night, Cid sets up his shadow character in his secret room, excited to make his move. He uses treasures he's stolen and money he made from being Alexia's fake boyfriend to create the perfect setup. Beta, another ally, arrives, and Cid announces that it's time to get serious. As he leaves his dorm, he's stopped by two knights who try to frame him by throwing Alexia's boot at him. But before they can do anything, the knights' lookouts mysteriously fall, taken down by unseen forces. Meanwhile, chaos breaks out in the city as a giant monster starts destroying everything. The mad doctor injects something into the humanoid monster, ignoring Alexia's warnings, and the monster mutates. It even helps Alexia escape after it kills the doctor. While searching for a way out, Alexia runs into Zenon, who reveals that he funded the doctor's research so he could get a promotion. Furious, Alexia attacks him, but Zenon easily blocks her moves. Just as Alexia is about to give up, Cid shows up as Shadow. Zenon, acting full of himself, brags about how strong his cult is, but Cid just calmly asks where the cult's core members are. As the battle continues, the monster wreaks havoc on the city. Iris tries to stop it, but she can't. Alpha arrives, noting that Iris is only making things worse for the monster, and she steps in to end it. The monster transforms back into a human, revealing that it's actually Milia Grease's daughter. Alpha tells Iris to sit back and let Shadow Garden handle it. Desperate to prove himself, Zenon swallows a red pill that boosts his power, but Cid still easily beats him. During the fight, Alexia watches in awe, realizing that Cid's sword style is exactly what she's been trying to master. Zenon transforms, but Cid completely overpowers him, leaving a giant crater in the middle of the city. Alexia, unaware that Shadow is Cid, tries to copy his technique, but Iris stops her and pulls her into a hug. The two sisters finally make up. The next day, Alexia, now free of Zenon, asks Cid if they can keep up their relationship. For the first time, Alexia gets rejected, and she doesn't take it well. She gets so mad that the wall ends up covered in blood from her rage. Meanwhile, the Shadow Garden group has a meeting to celebrate their win, but they also talk about a new problem. Some group is pretending to be Shadow Garden and dishing out their own justice. Now that Iris knows about the cult and the Shadow Garden, she picks her most trusted knights, Glenn and Marco, to join her new investigation team. She tells them to find someone who can figure out what a strange relic they found at the scene is. Meanwhile, a pink-haired girl named Sherry Barnett is busy looking at the relic in a book. She accidentally bumps into Cid, who has blood on his face. Sherry, who is really smart even though she's still a student, gets called by Iris to study the relic. She's unsure at first because she's just a student, but her adoptive father encourages her to give it a try. In the end, Sherry agrees, and Iris assigns a team called the Crimson Order to protect her. Alexia offers to help too, and Iris allows her to join the team. On a lighter note, Cid, Skell, and Poe go shopping, but there's a long line at the store. A woman approaches Cid and asks him to take a survey. He agrees, leaving Skell and Poe behind. The woman leads him to a mansion hidden behind the store, and inside, he finds a throne room. There, Cid meets Gamma, one of the 7 shadows, who owns the store. Inspired by Cid's stories from his past life, Gamma admits she's the smartest of the group but also the clumsiest. She even trips down the stairs. Gamma asks Cid to sit on the throne, and he does, feeling like a king. Gamma brags about their business success, showing off the mountain of gold coins they've earned. She also tells Cid that they're working on catching the imposters pretending to be Shadow Garden. Cid, still thinking about Alexia, suddenly claims he's figured everything out. Before leaving, Gamma introduces the newest member of the Shadows. Cid asks for some chocolate, and Gamma offers it for free, but Cid sneaks a coin anyway and laughs as he leaves. Later, Cid is walking with his friends when he suddenly notices Alexia nearby. To get away from them, he quickly claims that he needs to use the bathroom, making his friends leave him to deal with his emergency on his own, especially since the curfew is approaching. After dealing with his supposed issue, Cid heads toward a dark alley. There, he spots Alexia, wounded and cornered by 3 men who are pretending to be members of the Shadow Garden. Just as they're about to harm her, Shadow steps in and swiftly takes one of them down, furious at them for tarnishing the name of Shadow Garden. Cid chases after the remaining 2 men, and manages to take down another one. Before he can finish off the last one, New suddenly appears and requests to handle the final man for interrogation purposes. Meanwhile, the leader of the outlaws, Gaunt Knight, learns that his men have been dealt with but isn't too worried. He tells his people that getting the relic back is their main goal. Alexia later meets with Iris and tells her the attackers were faking being part of Shadow Garden. Still, Iris thinks both the cult and Shadow Garden are enemies of the kingdom. In a funny twist, rumors about Cid spread through the academy. The students mock him, claiming he wet his pants during the incident. Skell and Poe, who swore to keep it a secret, nervously ask Cid if he still has the chocolate. Despite their betrayal, Cid gives them both chocolates, and they plan to give them to the girls they like. Skell tries his luck first, confessing his feelings to the girl he's been crushing on, only to get confronted by her angry fans. When Poe tries to talk to his crush, she screams and runs away, calling him a stalker again. Feeling caught up in another one of his background character moments, Cid casually gives his chocolate to the first girl he runs into, Sherry Barnett, and quickly walks away without saying anything. At home, Sherry is still thinking about what happened in the library when her father, Barnett, walks into her room and notices the chocolates. When she tells him a boy gave them to her, Barnett teases his daughter, telling her it must be a love confession. Sherry, still unsure about her feelings, listens as her father jokes that the boy is waiting for her reply. She's left wondering what to do next. Meanwhile, Nu, who's pretending to be a student, reports back to Cid about the cult members she interrogated. Unfortunately, she couldn't get any useful information because one of them was completely brainwashed. He lost his mind before she could find anything out. She also tells Cid that the cult uses orphans as soldiers, calling them children of Diablo. But Cid's not really paying attention. His mind is distracted by the fencing tournament his friends signed him up for. Nu brings up a guy named Rex, one of the children, who's still got some of his own thoughts despite the brainwashing. Cid, still distracted, just asks Nu to give him some time to think about it. The tournament begins, and Claire wins her match. Next up, it's Cid's turn to fight against Rose. As soon as the match starts, both of them charge at each other. Cid, playing his usual role as a background character, uses fake blood to make it look like Rose hit him really hard. He calls this trick his bloody tornado. Every time he gets knocked down, he stands back up, coughing up more fake blood. He's waiting for Rose to land a final blow, but the referee stops the fight and declares Rose the winner. As Cid is carried to the infirmary, Rose whispers that she respects him for his never-give-up attitude. After getting treated, Sherry comes to see Cid. She compliments him on his bravery during the fight and hands him some cookies. She then suggests that they start off as friends, even though Cid is confused about what she's trying to say. Still, he goes along with it. Just when things couldn't get more awkward, Barnett joins their table, making Cid even more uncomfortable. Not wanting to be around important people, Cid makes an excuse and leaves, pretending his injuries are too painful. Later, Sherry runs into Alexia. Alexia thinks Sherry wants to talk about the relic. However, Sherry asks if she's still dating Cid. Blushing, Alexia tells her they've broken up and were never really together, which makes Sherry feel relieved because she plans on dating Cid. Now she can focus on her research. But Alexia isn't feeling so calm, trying hard to hide how upset she is. A few days pass, and Cid notices people are treating him kindly, though he's not sure why. While he's lost in thought, Rose and her assistant walk in to talk about the upcoming student elections. Meanwhile, Gaunt Knight, the enemy leader, puts his plan into action, trapping the whole academy inside a magical barrier. As usual, Cid is the only one who realizes what's going on. Alexia arrives at the academy's gate and is horrified to see the guards lying dead on the ground. Inside the school, Cid notices his magic isn't working as well as it should. Just then, the children of Diablo burst into the room, pretending to be members of Shadow Garden. They announce they're taking over the school, which leads Rose to raise her sword. But to her shock, her magic doesn't work, and the enemies destroy her weapon. One of them moves in to finish her off, but Cid jumps in and saves her, not because he cares, but to play the role of a background character who dies dramatically. Rose, however, misunderstands and thinks Cid truly cared for her. The enemies round up all the students and drag them to the auditorium. Left for dead, Cid uses his magic to secretly revive himself by pounding his chest, then turns his magic into threads to counteract the barrier's magic blocking effect. Elsewhere, Sherry is busy studying the relic when Rex smashes through her window to steal it. Before he can hurt her, Glenn arrives just in time to block Rex's attack. Marco, who's fighting nearby, tells Sherry to run. With the barrier still up, Iris hesitates to give the order to rescue the students, not knowing how to break through. Meanwhile, Cid is perched on a rooftop, casually picking off enemies one by one while waiting for the knights to make a move. He spots Sherry wandering through the school, completely unaware of the danger around her. Just as she trips on the stairs, Cid catches her and gives her a stern lecture before they head to her father's office. There, Sherry finds the book she's been looking for and identifies the artifact as the Eye of Avarice, which absorbs magic and leaves everyone powerless. Even worse, she explains, the eye will explode once it's fully charged. But there's hope. Sherry reveals that the relic she's been studying can counter the Eye of Avarice because it can store tons of magical energy. Cid goes off to gather the tools Sherry needs. But on the way, he runs into Rex and some other minor enemies. He quickly deals with them, and Rex, thinking Cid is using some special relic to make himself faster, tries to trap him with a net barrier. His plan totally fails. Rex looks around and realizes his comrades are all down, and his confidence vanishes. A little while later, a new arrival finds Glenn and Marco. Glenn didn't survive, and Marco is seriously injured. It's revealed that Marco was her fiancé. Unsure of what to do next, Nu hesitate. But Cid returns with the tools. Nu informs him that reinforcements have arrived and are waiting for his orders. After Sherry finishes refining the relic, she leads Cid through a hidden tunnel that connects to the auditorium. While they walk, Sherry has flashbacks of her mother's death. After her mom died, Barnet took Sherry in and raised her as his own. Sherry, wanting to repay him, promised to help with his research. Back in the present, Sherry enters the auditorium and activates the relic, cancelling out the effects of the Eye of Avarice. With their magic back, the knights jump into action, turning the auditorium into a battlefield. Not wanting to miss out, Cid, now acting as Shadow, crashes through the ceiling to join the fight. The real Shadow Garden members also show up to help out. As the students start evacuating, Gaunt Knight sets the auditorium on fire and makes his escape. Outside, Iris questions Rose about what happened, and Rose explains that Shadow Garden saved them from a group pretending to be Shadow Garden. Iris grows even more suspicious of Shadow Garden's motives. Inside the burning auditorium, Sherry frantically searches for her father. Meanwhile, Cid confronts Barnet, who reveals himself to be the Skeletal Knight. When Cid asks why Barnet did all of this, he explains that he was once a great swordsman but got sick and was desperate for a cure. He found the Eye of Avarice with the help of Sherry's mother, but when she wanted to hand it over to the government, Barnet killed her. Sherry, not knowing the truth, continued her mother's work. Cid offers to settle things once and for all, but Barnet easily knocks him down. However, Shadow appears and is ready to fight. Realizing he's outmatched, Barnet tries to combine the Eye of Avarice with another relic to regain his power, but it doesn't work. Shadow blocks all his attacks with ease. In a final desperate move, Barnet reveals he's framed Shadow Garden for all the crimes. But Shadow just shrugs it off, saying Shadow Garden isn't here to protect the kingdom, they follow their own path. Shadow then defeats Barnet using the same technique he used on Sherry's mother. Sherry, devastated by her father's death, cries uncontrollably. Shadow decides it's better if she doesn't know the truth and leaves her to grieve. After the battle, Shadow Garden is declared the kingdom's enemy, and the academy gives everyone an early summer break because of the damage. With both her parents gone, Sherry tells Cid she's leaving to study abroad and start a new life. Cid asks her what her new goal is, but she refuses to tell him, saying it's a secret. As she walks away, Sherry gives off a strange, dark vibe, hinting she's not as innocent as she seems. During the summer break, Cid receives a letter from Alpha, summoning him to the sacred land of Lindworm. Meanwhile, Epsilon, one of the 7 shadows, is excited for her day to start. She uses slime magic to adjust her appearance, competing with Beta over who has the better figure. After the fake Shadow Garden is dealt with, Rose rushes to the infirmary, crying. She grabs Cid's hand and, thinking he truly cares for her, offers him her heart. Later, they're both seen on a train heading to Lindworm, though they only bumped into each other by accident. When they arrive, a keychain catches Cid's attention. It shows a demonic arm pierced by a sword, representing the hero Olivier cutting off Diablo's left arm. Rose explains that they're in the city where the legendary battle took place. She adds that the ruins in Lindworm are believed to be where Diablo's arm is sealed. As they walk around, they stumble upon a book signing event for a famous author named Natsume. Rose, excited, rushes to get her book signed. Meanwhile, Cid notices the books are plagiarized versions of stories from his past life. Wondering if someone else reincarnated like him, Cid gets in line, only to be greeted by Beta, who has been using his stories to make money. Later, at the cathedral, Alpha is seen standing next to the body of Archbishop Drake before leaving as knights arrive. That night, Cid spots a cloaked figure running across rooftops. He chases after him and blocks his attack. Epsilon shows up to deliver the final blow. She reports that the cult's executioner managed to escape, so they'll need to move on to Plan B. As always, Cid is ready to follow his own path, doing things his way. Cid, feeling pretty good about his strength, decides to relax in the hot springs. Nearby, Alexia is trying to calm herself down. When someone asks why she's in Lindworm, she says she's a special guest for the goddess's trial. When Cid is asked the same thing, he lies and says a friend invited him to watch. Alexia explains that the goddess's trial is a big battle where fighters go up against ancient warriors summoned from a place called the Sanctuary. She also mentions how a swordsman named Venom summoned the legendary hero Olivier once, but he still lost the fight. Soon, the trial begins, led by Archbishop Jack Nelson. Before everything started, Nelson wouldn't let Alexia investigate him, telling her to focus on the former Archbishop instead. As the trial begins, a huge magic circle forms around the arena, creating a barrier. The first challenger, Batirius from the Oriana Kingdom, steps up, but no ancient warrior comes out to face him, which means he wasn't worthy. As more fighters fail to summon anyone, Cid starts imagining how cool it would be if he jumped in and surprised everyone as a mystery fighter. But he realizes that random people aren't allowed to compete. What Cid doesn't know is that Rose secretly signed him up to show off his skills and impress her father. When Cid finds out, he decides to compete, but as his alter ego, Shadow. When he steps into the arena, everyone is shocked when he summons Aurora, the Witch of Calamity, who is one of the strongest witches in history. Both Cid and Aurora smile at each other before the battle starts. Aurora attacks first, throwing magical spears, but Cid dodges them easily. In just one quick move, Cid defeats her. Even though the fight was easy, Cid wishes he could have fought her when she was at full power. After winning, Cid disappears from the arena, leaving everyone in the crowd confused. As soon as the barrier goes down, a strange portal appears in the arena. Cid notices another portal nearby and, feeling curious, steps into it. Meanwhile, Nelson cancels the rest of the trial and orders the guards to clear the arena. He also tries to get Alexia and the others to leave, but they refuse. The Shadow Garden members, led by Alpha, are the first to enter the portal. Epsilon and the others pretend to take Gamma as a hostage to make Nelson follow. Rose looks worried, but Alexia knows she's just acting and stays calm. Nelson, clearly frustrated, summons Venom, who immediately attacks Epsilon. Luckily, Epsilon's slime magic protects her, but Venom's attack embarrasses her by revealing one of her secrets. Angry, Epsilon easily beats Venom and drags Nelson into the portal, with everyone else following. Inside the sanctuary, Alpha leads them to a statue of Olivier, who looks almost exactly like her. Nelson explains that these ancient warriors were cursed by something Cid once called the Demon's Curse. As they go deeper into the sanctuary, Alpha opens a door leading to a graveyard filled with the remains of ancient heroes, including Olivier. Meanwhile, Cid runs into Aurora again. She admits she didn't summon him but says she enjoyed their fight. After talking for a while, Aurora explains that the sanctuary is actually a prison for the memories of ancient heroes. To free her, they need to destroy the magical core that powers the sanctuary. But magic doesn't work inside the sanctuary because it gets absorbed. Cid, feeling confident as always, says he's great at breaking things and agrees to help. As they explore Olivier's memories, Cid and Aurora discover that the cult performed awful experiments on orphans. Most of the kids didn't survive, but Olivier did because her body was compatible with Diablo's cells. Nelson explains that the cult wanted to create a strong warrior to fight Diablo, and Olivier was their best option. The cult also made red pills from Diablo's cells, which gave people special powers. But Nelson wasn't happy with just that, so he created something stronger, the beads of Diablo, which give people insane strength and make them immortal. Alexia jokes that the beads probably cause hair loss, but Nelson insists his baldness is from stress. Alpha jumps in, explaining that the beads of Diablo have two big problems. People have to take one every year, and there aren't enough of them. That's why the Knights of Rounds only have 12 members. She also reveals that Nelson is the 11th member. Furious, Nelson starts transforming into a monster, but before he can finish, Delta charges in and throws him into the water. Things get worse when Nelson returns stronger than ever. He traps the group in different memories, splitting them up. Alpha and Delta find themselves fighting a demonic version of Nelson who can create clones of himself. Delta quickly takes out several clones but notices that the closer they get to the core, the weaker she becomes, while Nelson keeps getting stronger. Meanwhile, Cid and Aurora find themselves in another memory, this time in a battlefield full of dead bodies. They run into a younger version of Aurora, who is crying. Aurora tries to erase this painful memory, but suddenly the corpses rise up and attack them. Aurora quickly realizes that the sanctuary is rejecting them. At the same time, Epsilon's group finds the sanctuary's archives. They discover documents about the cult and take pictures with a camera that Omega, the 7th member of Shadow Garden, created using Cid's knowledge from his past life. Even though their magic is almost gone, Cid and Aurora manage to defeat the zombies, but more keep coming. To end the memory, Cid kills the younger version of Aurora, shattering the memory and letting them move forward. They finally reach the core of the sanctuary, where Delta is still fighting. She's already defeated hundreds of clones, but Nelson keeps summoning more. The core is locked behind a door and wrapped in chains. Cid tries to break the chains with his sword, but it doesn't work. Aurora tells him that the holy sword nearby is the key, but only a chosen one or a descendant of the hero can use it. Cid tries, but the sword doesn't move. While taking a quick break, Delta keeps fighting, refusing to stop. After taking down hundreds more clones, the memory collapses, and they are transported to another place. Still refusing to give up, Nelson summons Olivia to fight for him. At the same time, Epsilon announces that their investigation is complete. They get ready to leave, right when the Archbishop gets the news that someone broke into the Sanctuary Center. Cid figures it's the perfect moment for the hero of the story to show up and grab the legendary sword. But instead of the hero, Nelson arrives, with his shiny forehead gleaming. Cid soon realizes that Alpha and Olivia look like twins. At Nelson's command, Olivia attacks Cid and completely overpowers him. Aurora, watching the one-sided fight, steps in to stop the battle. Nelson offers to spare Cid's life if Aurora agrees to help with their research. Aurora thinks about it, hinting that Cid doesn't stand a chance against Olivia. Of course, Cid isn't thrilled about that and keeps taunting Nelson. Annoyed, Nelson orders Olivia to finish Cid off. Olivia, with a blank expression, does as she's told, while Aurora looks freaked out, and Nelson just grins. But then, Cid surprises everyone by smiling wickedly, his eyes glowing. He purposely guides Olivia's sword away from his vital spots, then suddenly grabs her and bites her neck. With Olivia out of the way, Cid calmly walks toward Nelson, who tries to pull another trick. He uses the Sanctuary's massive magical energy to summon a bunch of Olivia clones, but Cid takes them all out in one shot, shattering the clones with just a glance. Nelson's jaw drops in shock when it's revealed that Cid had cleverly compressed his magic to keep it from being drained. Tired of Nelson's games, Cid unleashes his most powerful spell,
Atomic,
destroying the magic core and wiping out the whole sanctuary. When he wakes up in the forest, Aurora is right there with him. She admits that she was the one who summoned Cid in the first place. She apologizes for not being honest and thanks him for helping her find peace. Before disappearing, she hints that Cid might meet the real her someday. Meanwhile, Alexia and Rose decide to team up and create their own group to dig deeper into the mysteries behind the cult in the Shadow Garden. Natsum also joins them to keep a close eye on what they're up to. Later, Alpha and Epsilon discuss what they found in the Sanctuary's archive. They discover that Aurora's true identity is the demon Diablos. Epsilon suggests telling Shadow, but Alpha reveals that Shadow already knew. Meanwhile, Alexia tells her sister Iris about the cult's connection to both the previous and current archbishops. Iris believes there's a bigger organization behind everything and decides to investigate the Church of Divine Teachings. She also tells Alexia that she's entering the Bushan Festival, an international fencing tournament, to win public support and get their father to listen to her. As the Bushan Festival gets closer, Rose is seen training hard, but something seems off. She reveals a strange demonic mark on her chest. Finally, the day of the festival arrives, and the strongest fighters from around the world gather in the royal capital. As usual, Cid has a plan. He's going to act weak, let the crowd laugh at him, and then surprise everyone with a huge comeback. To help with his disguise, Cid asks Gamma for help. She uses slime magic to change his face and gives him a new backstory. Cid becomes Mundane Man, a weak dark knight who was disowned by his family. With his new look, Cid fully steps into the role, changing his posture and behavior to match the character. As Mundane Man, Cid bumps into Rose, one of the challengers from the goddess's trial. She tells him he looks too weak to compete and should probably drop out. Mundane, staying in character, tells her not to judge him by how he looks. Then, a guy named Quentin shows up and tells Mundane to quit before he embarrasses himself. Mundane, clearly annoyed, says he's stronger than Quentin. Insulted, Quentin starts beating him up. Cid, sticking to his plan, lies on the ground, pretending to be helpless. Luckily, Rose steps in and stops Quentin, apologizing to Mundane for not helping sooner. Later that night, Cid runs into Rose, who shares some bad news. Her father has picked a man for her to marry, a high-ranking noble named Per Vashat. But things are worse than that. Her family is also pressuring her to give up her position as a Dark Knight. Cid tries to comfort her, telling her he will always believe in her, which helps her feel a little better. The next day, Skell drags Cid along to watch the preliminary matches at the tournament. Skell is collecting data to help him with betting, while he keeps rambling about his strategy. Goldie, a knight with an undefeated record, gives tips on how to predict the winner of a fight. Cid gets bored and leaves just as the next match is announced, Gonzalez versus Mundane. The moment Mundane enters the ring, Goldie confidently says Gonzalez will win in less than a second. Skell, impressed by Goldie's ability to assess warriors, is shocked when Mundane is declared the winner instead. The crowd gets angry, demanding their money back. Trying to save face, Goldie claims Gonzalez just tripped, and that's what he had predicted. Rose, who previously didn't think much of Mundane, changes her opinion after seeing his two powerful punches that knocked Gonzalez out. With Goldie set to face Mundane next, Skell asks Cid for money so he can bet on Goldie, but Cid refuses, trying to save his friend from losing cash. The following day, Skell rushes to tell Cid that Rose has stabbed her fiancé, Perv, and run away. Beta and Alexia, who are working together, agree to investigate the situation. What Alexia doesn't know is that Beta has already been investigating on her own and has figured out where Rose is hiding. Later that day, Cid runs into Beatrix, an elf woman who is looking for her niece. She says her niece is a beautiful girl who looks like her, which reminds Cid of Alpha, though he keeps quiet about it. Suddenly, Beatrix pulls out her sword, and Cid pretends to be scared, staggering backward and falling. Beatrix laughs and apologizes, teasing Cid by saying she thought he looked stronger. At the tournament, Quentin approaches Anna Rose and asks what she thinks of Mundane. Quentin saw Mundane's quick win and is now curious about his strength. After initially underestimating him, both Anna Rose and Quentin are now excited to see Mundane's upcoming fight against Goldie. Goldie enters the ring, ready to fight Mundane. Mundane, not in the mood, casually cracks his neck and dodges Goldie's attacks with ease. Oddly enough, Goldie feels like he's been hit in the stomach, though Mundane hasn't made a move. Frustrated, Goldie uses his secret sword technique, but Mundane sneezes, throwing off the move completely. Just like that, Goldie loses for the first time, much to the shock of the audience. Meanwhile, Iris meets with Perv to give him the security plan for the main event of the Bushan festival. She offers her knights to help with security, but Perv declines. Iris notices that Perv seems a lot healthier than what's been reported, but he brushes it off, saying he can handle everything on his own, just like when she saved Alexia. Iris becomes even more suspicious of him. At the tournament, Mundane quickly defeats Quentin and secures his spot in the main event. Anna Rose, who is now his next opponent, tries to intimidate him, but Mundane just smirks and removes a heavy piece of armor, which hits the ground with a loud crash, cracking the floor. Meanwhile, Rose is shown running through tunnels, trying to escape from the knights who are chasing her. Later that night, Cid hears a piano playing and is reminded of his childhood. Though he had been forced to play, he always enjoyed one particular piece, Moonlight Sonata. Recognizing the song, Cid follows the music, thinking he might meet someone from his previous life. He finds Epsilon playing the piano, with Gamma and Beta nearby. Epsilon brags about how she's connected with important people and has even won awards for her music, though Cid knows she's just plagiarizing music from his world. He doesn't know how to feel about that. While Beta tries to distract Alexia from finding Rose, Alexia figures out that Rose is hiding in the underground tunnels. Meanwhile, Rose, sitting by herself, reflects on how strange her father seemed when he announced her engagement. The knights were acting weird too, with creepy smiles. Rose realizes that Perv, a member of the cult, had brainwashed everyone. She thinks about turning herself in to stop a war between Midgar and Oriana and save her father. As she wonders if Cid still believes in her, her body begins to show signs of possession. Just then, she hears the Moonlight Sonata again and follows it, eventually finding Shadow playing the piano. After finishing the song, Shadow asks Rose what she truly wants. Rose says she wants to protect the people she cares about. Seeing her determination, Shadow grants her powerful magic and frees her from the possession. After giving her some advice, Shadow disappears as cult members arrive. Rose, using her new power, easily defeats them all with a single strike. Feeling the surge of magical energy, Alexia and Beta track it to Rose. Alexia bombards her with questions, but Rose refuses to answer, not wanting to drag her friend into her problems. Frustrated, Alexia decides to fight her to get the truth. After defeating Alexia, Rose leads her to Beta and declares that she's ready to stop hiding and start fighting for what she believes in. Later, Claire, who's been angry at Cid all day, finally cools down and hands him a ticket to the main tournament. She has replaced Rose in the event. When Cid gets to the venue, he realizes the ticket is for VIP seating. He finds himself sitting next to Iris, who tells him she plans to recruit Claire into her personal order once she graduates. Iris also apologizes for the trouble caused by Alexia and her ex-fiancé, Zenon. As they watch the tournament, Iris mentions that her favorite competitor is Anna Rose, though she doesn't plan to lose to anyone. Cid asks if Mundane caught her eye, but the students around them dismiss him as lucky. Cid is thrilled because everything is going according to plan to boost Mundane's reputation. Iris then talks about Beatrix, the first ever Bushan Festival champion and an elven sword master. Cid is surprised by how famous Beatrix is, sensing a strong presence nearby. Cid excuses himself and runs into Beatrix again. She keeps asking about her niece, but Cid stays silent. Back in the VIP section, Perv takes Cid's seat and informs Iris that the king is in poor health, but will attend the event tomorrow. Iris tells him that her father, Klaus, will also be there. The next match begins, and Anarose steps into the ring, showing off her impressive skills. Herb is interested in her and plans to invite her to serve his kingdom. When Iris is asked about Mundane, she admits she hasn't seen him fight yet. The match starts, and Anarose charges at Mundane with fast, aggressive moves. But Mundane is too fast, dodging all her attacks easily. She tries to finish him off with a powerful strike, but Mundane dodges again and strikes first, catching her off guard. Realizing she can't win by attacking, Anarose tries to focus on defense, but it's no use. Mundane defeats her and takes down yet another favorite. After his victory, Mundane is set to face Iris. Herb, worried about Mundane ruining his plans, asks Iris if she feels confident about winning. Iris admits Mundane's swordsmanship is beautiful, but she believes she's on a whole different level. Nervous, Perv orders his men to investigate Mundane. At the VIP area, Iris stops the guards from keeping Beatrix out, announcing that she's her guest. People around them realize Beatrix is the legendary elven sword master, and they gather around her, but none of them know anything about her missing niece. Meanwhile, at the castle, Perv forces the king to drink a potion that makes him obey every command. Perv plans to use the king to start a war with Midgar, hoping to seize power for himself. The next day, Iris faces Mundane in the ring. She's determined to defeat him with a single blow. But just as she gets ready, she suddenly has a terrifying vision of her own death, which throws her off balance. She tries to shake it off, but another illusion overwhelms her with fear. The crowd grows angry as she hesitates, and Iris, desperate, unleashes all her strength and lunges at Mundane. But to her shock, she realizes he hasn't even drawn his sword. Mundane disarms her at lightning speed and wins the match. After Iris's crushing defeat, Perv can't believe it. His attention shifts to Rose, who has just returned. Rose apologizes to her father for what's happened and prepares to do something drastic. Despite Perv's orders, the king forgives her. Rose leaps toward Perv, using her father as a shield, but she doesn't back down. She frees her father from Perv's control in a surprising way. As Perv orders his men to stop her, Mundane, now revealing himself as Shadow, steps in and takes down the cult members. Seeing Shadow, Rose ruins the moment by calling him the stylish ruffian slayer. She remembers him as the one who saved her from bandits in the past, and ever since then, she dreamed of becoming a great fencer. Shadow reminds Rose of her mission, and she quickly flees the scene. Meanwhile, Beatrix attacks Shadow, eager for a challenge, and Perv uses the distraction to escape. Iris, seeing Shadow again, yells his name in anger. As Beatrix struggles to hit him, Iris joins the fight with a powerful weapon. But even together, they can't keep up with Shadow's speed. The entire town becomes their battleground as the fight continues. Eventually, Alpha offers Rose a place in the Shadow Garden, which Rose accepts. As Shadow defeats Iris and Beatrix, he decides to leave, but they refuse to give up. Iris warns him that he's now an enemy of the entire kingdom, with nowhere to run. Shadow laughs and tells her he's never planned on running away. He activates a powerful spell, scaring everyone, but then vanishes into thin air without releasing the magic. Iris, frustrated, lets out a scream. Later, the kingdom publishes news of how Iris and Beatrix drove away Shadow, while Sherry, who seems innocent, secretly vows to take revenge on him. Beatrix leaves town without finding her niece. The Shadow Garden women return to their routines, and Cid goes back to being an ordinary student. At the Shadow Garden base, Rose is introduced to Lambda, the drill instructor, who tears Rose's clothes and gives her the new name 666, marking her transformation from a princess to a soldier. The new season of the series starts with the Shadow group coming together. Their job is to take down evil organizations, and they're discussing how the bad guys from before, like Diablo and Warner, have suddenly stopped all their activities. This seems like good news, because now the Shadow group can focus on fixing the corruption in their own city. But then, the girls from Cid's team bring up a new issue. Cid is surprised, thinking everything is fine, but the girls tell him about suspicious money disappearing from the city. They don't know where it's going, but they believe it's being used for something bad. This isn't just a guess, the evidence is a red moon appearing, which frightens the girls. They tell Cid they need to deal with this, but he thinks they're making too big a deal out of it. To him, it's just a red moon, nothing to worry about. In the lawless city, two tough fighters arrive, determined to find and kill the Blood Queen. They search for her castle and, once they locate it, plan to enter and take her down. But before they get too close, a guard with a hidden face speaks to them. He tells them that only guests, servants, or fighters can enter, and they'll have to defeat him to pass. This guard isn't just anyone. He's the White Demon, a fighter who lost an arm in a previous battle but now takes down cocky fighters without any trouble. As the two approach, he kills them with ease. The next day, Cid and his sister Claire arrive in the lawless city, keeping things low-key. Cid, who always works in secret, is seen by many as weak, especially since he let his sister Claire defeat him before. Now, Claire is constantly worried about him, thinking he's a failure. She brings him to the city and advises him to think about his future and what career he wants to pursue. As they walk, they come across a street vendor shouting about selling fighters. He compliments Claire, but she's not interested and keeps walking. Feeling bored, Cid decides to explore the streets by himself, hoping to spot signs of the red moon's impact on the people. He stops to get something to eat, then he hears a strange noise and finds a group of people beating up a ghoul, a vampire's assistant who's about to become a full vampire. The people continue hitting the ghoul, who is unable to fight back, until suddenly the red moon appears in the sky. The moon activates all the magical energy in the city, allowing the ghoul to stand up. He bites the people attacking him, turning them into ghouls too. As the newly transformed ghouls move towards Cid, he wonders when to start fighting. But before he can act, a woman jumps in, thinking Cid is too weak to handle them. She fights off the ghouls and reveals that she's a vampire hunter. She saves Cid, but tells him to get out of the way because the red moon means danger is coming. Cid, now fully in his role as Shadow, dons his superhero outfit and heads out to protect the city from the vampires. Along the way, he saves a woman named Marie, who is shocked that someone came to her rescue and decides to leave the city. Meanwhile, Claire is crying, believing that her brother is dead, blaming herself for bringing him to the city. But the vampire hunter named Mary tells Claire that Cid is alive. She saw a boy matching his description enter the Crimson Tower, a place where the Blood Queen is supposed to be revived by using the blood of a young boy. Cid might be the sacrifice. Claire, unaware of Cid's true strength, believes Mary and decides to team up with her to storm the tower and save her brother, not realizing that Cid is already inside freeing people. The lawless city has 3 main towers, each controlled by different factions. The Crimson Tower holds the Blood Queen's body and relies on the chaos of the Red Moon to revive her. The White Tower is ruled by Yuki, a powerful 9-tailed fox, while the Black Tower is led by Juggernaut. Both Yuki and Juggernaut want to stop the Crimson Tower's plan. Word reaches the ruler of the Crimson Tower that their plan is failing because someone is wiping out all the ghouls. That someone turns out to be Cid, who nobody can beat. Cid finally faces off against the ghouls in front of both Juggernaut and Yuki, shocking them. When they ask who he is, he reveals his name, Shadow. Juggernaut and Yuki already know about Shadow because of his previous battles with corrupt merchants and priests, so they decide to leave him alone. However, the White Demon, still loyal to protecting the Crimson Tower, rushes at Cid, thinking he can take him down. But he quickly realizes he's made a mistake. Cid easily cuts off his other arm, splits him in half, and kills him. Meanwhile, Claire and Mary continue through the Crimson Tower, determined to save Cid. At the same time, the Shadow Garden Squad, led by Beta, is also in the tower, searching for books that could help them cure vampirism. Beta, who documents Cid's adventures, recognizes Claire and suggests they avoid fighting each other. Both groups agree to focus on their own missions. As they move forward, Claire starts to doubt Mary, wondering how she's lived for so long and why she seems hesitant to kill vampires. Mary avoids the questions, saying everyone has secrets. Eventually, they encounter Juggernaut, who is slaughtering everyone nearby. They try to hide, but Juggernaut senses them and attacks. Mary tries to fight him but is struck down, and Claire, not strong enough to help, is hit too. Desperate, Mary takes blood from Claire and goes to face Juggernaut again. Just as she's about to be killed, Shadow arrives and throws Juggernaut off the tower. He tells the 2 girls that it's too dangerous and they should hide. After the fight, Mary reveals her true identity and story to Claire. Over 1,000 years ago, vampires ruled over humans, easily killing them for their blood. But as humans became more skilled, they learned how to defend themselves and began fighting back. Elizabeth, the Blood Queen, realized the endless killing had to stop and convinced the vampires to stop drinking human blood. She built a city where vampires and humans could live peacefully. But Elizabeth herself struggled with her thirst for blood. On the night of the Red Moon, her servant, Crimson, gave her a single drop of blood, which caused her to lose control. She spent the night killing humans, and the next day, full of regret, she took her own life, asking Mary to protect her body. But Crimson and his followers took the body, and Mary has been trying to retrieve it ever since. Claire, feeling cursed and worried she might soon turn into a monster, agrees to help Mary retrieve Elizabeth's body. They also plan to save Cid, who Claire still believes is trapped in the tower. Meanwhile, Cid is in Elizabeth's vault, looking for anything useful. He finds nothing of interest except for some gold, which he decides to take. At the same time, Crimson is trying to revive Elizabeth by placing her heart in a dead body. Just as the ritual is about to be completed, Cid shows up, destroys the area, and ruins Crimson's plan. Thinking his mission is complete, he takes more gold and prepares to leave, not realizing that Elizabeth has been revived in the form of a giant monster. Elizabeth, now fully awakened, attacks Claire, stabbing her and drinking her blood. Mary begs Elizabeth to stop, but Elizabeth ignores her. The Shadow Garden squad arrives and manages to take Claire to safety, but Elizabeth continues to overpower them. Juggernaut, passing by, tries to fight her, but she easily defeats him, breaking his leg and throwing him aside. Elizabeth continues feeding on the blood of her victims, growing stronger and healing her wounds quickly. Beta orders one of the squad members to get Claire out of there, as she is their leader's sister and must be saved. Claire wakes up in a hospital, where a doctor named Aurora tells her she's not cursed, as she had thought. Someone had healed her long ago, though Aurora doesn't mention it was Shadow. Aurora explains that Claire now has 2 types of blood inside her, and if she can learn to control it, she'll become incredibly strong. Back at the tower, Elizabeth continues her rampage, but Shadow arrives just in time. He is the first warrior who can stand against her. The girls of the Shadow Garden finally realize that Shadow has been protecting them all along. After a fierce battle, Shadow flies into the sky with Elizabeth, telling her that she is sick and must be stopped. He destroys her once and for all, returning all the vampires back to normal humans. The red moon also returns to its usual color. Later, Cid is seen eating in the street, thinking that everything that happened was normal. He's more worried about Claire and the mixed blood inside her, not knowing if it will help or harm her. As he and Claire board a train to leave the lawless city, Cid continues to worry about her. When Claire asks if he knows Shadow, Cid says no, only that he remembers Shadow burning down their school last year. Claire, now with new powers in her left hand, tells Cid not to worry, and he reassures her that they're both fine. Cid's mind drifts back to the gold he took, 500 coins. He tells himself that if he ever needs money again, he'll return to the lawless city and steal from the White Tower and the Black Tower, since they're both still standing. After returning to the city, the Shadow Garden members were surprised when they saw someone at the train station attempting to steal commercial goods. When they questioned the man, he revealed that he worked for Garter, a name they didn't expect. Garter was known as a respectable figure, someone who wasn't involved in criminal activities. This revelation confused the members. However, despite their confusion, the man was still determined to steal, so the members quickly killed him to avoid wasting time with pointless arguments. They realized this wouldn't be the end of it. Word would spread, and soon other organizations would likely come to seek revenge. This meant the city was on the edge of a serious conflict that could lead to war. Meanwhile, Cid was spending time with his friends. They proudly showed off their new clothes, thinking they had purchased genuine brand name items. However, their happiness was short-lived when they discovered that all of the clothes were fake. The shock was undeniable, and Cid began to suspect that a larger organization was behind this. They were likely producing these counterfeit goods and making tons of money by tricking people into buying fake items. Realizing this was no small issue, Cid decided it would be his new mission to uncover who was responsible. Since he didn't have anything else on his plate, Cid put on his shadow outfit and took the train to investigate just how far this problem had spread. On the train, Cid met a woman who gave him some valuable information. She explained that there were now 2 major companies controlling the market in the capital, Garter Company and Mitsugoshi Company. Both companies had been producing questionable goods, some genuine and others fake, but either way, they were making massive profits. To protect themselves from anyone who might challenge them, both companies had hired a powerful knight named Getten. Getten was extremely strong, and no one had ever been able to defeat him. He helped Garter keep control over their shady business dealings. After reaching his destination, Cid walked through the market and saw the chaos firsthand. There was an unnatural number of people crowding around both Garter and Mitsugoshi's products, buying them without a second thought. However, Cid quickly noticed that the issue wasn't just about fake goods. He realized that counterfeit money was also being passed around. The entire city's fast-paced trade made it easy for people to accept the fake money without even realizing it. This led Cid to decide that he needed to investigate not only the fake goods but also who was responsible for flooding the market with counterfeit money. However, Cid had his own financial problems to deal with. He often found himself having to steal just to get by, so this time, he decided to join the counterfeit operation. Using the alias John Smith, he started working with the woman he met on the train, making sure she wouldn't talk about their plans. Once satisfied, Cid jumped into the business of counterfeiting money. Since he knew he would need help for this mission, Cid recruited Delta, one of the most powerful members of the Shadow Garden. However, Delta had a violent streak. Whenever she entered a fight, she wouldn't stop until she had completely dismembered her enemies. Delta's bloody behavior didn't go unnoticed. Soon, the deaths of those involved in the counterfeit operation began to spread, causing panic among the commercial organizations. Word reached Getten, who was furious. Not liking the situation, he sent a group of his strongest knights to put an end to the chaos and deal with whoever was behind the attacks. Delta, who was still on her rampage, continued to kill anyone who stood in her way. During one battle, a man begged for his life, claiming to be her brother. Delta approached him and confirmed that he was indeed her older brother, now working with Getten. Despite the revelation, Delta coldly killed him anyway, telling Cid not to worry. She explained that she had over 1,000 brothers and sisters, so losing one didn't matter much to her. After this, Delta kept bothering Cid, asking him to return with her to her tribe and challenge her father. She explained that if he won, he could become the leader of the tribe. But Cid wasn't interested in tribal politics. He was focused on finding out who was behind the counterfeiting operation and putting an end to it. Soon, Getten learned about the deaths of 2 of his soldiers and that money had been stolen from one of his hideouts. This news scared Garter, who suggested they stop all their operations until they could figure out who was behind these attacks. But Getten refused, telling Garter that his job was just to listen and follow orders. Getten believed the people behind the attacks were from Mitsugoshi, and decided to send even more powerful fighters to eliminate them. This time, he aimed to destroy the company's headquarters completely. Luna, who worked for Mitsugoshi, learned about Getten's plan and decided to handle it personally. She faced off against one of Getten's strongest warriors, Yutsuba, in an intense battle. Luna quickly figured out her opponent's fighting style and used it against him, catching him off guard. Just as he tried to escape, she threw her sword, killing him instantly. His body fell to the ground, lifeless. The next morning, news spread across the city about bodies being found near the Mitsugoshi headquarters. This caused confusion among the police because the building was supposed to be a commercial hub, not a place where people were getting killed. The mystery deepened, and the public started asking questions. While all this was happening, Cid was helping Alexia with her training. He gave her some new exercises to prepare her for the next potential attack from Getten's men. Over time, Alexia improved and thanked Cid for helping her, but Cid, as usual, was more interested in his food and didn't really engage with her. Meanwhile, Cid, in his John Smith persona, met with the woman behind the counterfeiting operation again. She told him she had found a large facility where they could start printing more fake money and flood the market with it, which would severely damage Garter's business. She also revealed her tragic backstory. Getten had killed her entire family, her father, mother, and siblings. Hearing this, John Smith reassured her that their plan was working perfectly, and that the counterfeit money was already circulating without anyone noticing. Both Garter and Mitsugoshi soon realized that the counterfeit money was spreading like wildfire. People were beginning to grow cautious, not knowing whether the money they had was real or fake. Getten, who had originally planned to destroy the economy by flooding the market with fake money, was shocked when he found out that his own company's banks were now filled with counterfeit bills. His plan had backfired, and he was losing money like everyone else. The members of the Shadow Garden, unaware that John Smith was actually Cid, decided to attack a train that was carrying counterfeit goods and money. But when they boarded the train, John Smith appeared and effortlessly defeated them, throwing them off the train. One of the Shadow Garden members noticed how strong John Smith was and began to suspect something, though she couldn't quite figure out who he was. As the counterfeit money continued to spread, it started to bankrupt businesses across the city. People were growing more concerned, and economic activity slowed down. Delta, who had been sent to stop John Smith, attempted to take him down but failed. Realizing he was Shadow, Delta demanded answers. Cid, finally admitting the truth, asked her to keep his secret and promised to give her a new mission. Not having any concrete ideas, Cid quickly thought of a way to get her out of his way. He told her to hunt down Juggernaut, the ruler of the Black Tower, an almost impossible mission. This was just an excuse to keep Delta busy. At the same time, Luna mistakenly assumed that Delta had been killed and started searching for her. Meanwhile, the counterfeit money had caused chaos in the city, bankrupting several companies. The banks began closing down, unable to handle the flood of fake bills. The situation worsened as 2 men from a powerful sect visited Getten and Garter to inform them that they were losing control. Annoyed by their arrogance, Getten killed the two men and ordered Garter to set up checkpoints throughout the capital, even if it meant angering the royal family. Garter was initially hesitant but agreed after seeing Getten's ruthless response. One of the Shadow Garden members then met with Cid to inform him of the situation. She told him that a massive amount of counterfeit money had been injected into the economy, and that the royal family would likely intervene soon. She also mentioned that Delta had disappeared after her mission to fight John Smith, and it was assumed she was dead. But Cid reassured her that Delta was alive and on a distant mission. Alpha, now suspicious, confronted John Smith on the train and quickly realized that he was actually Shadow. She demanded answers about the counterfeit money, but Cid brushed her off, telling her everything would make sense in time before tossing her off the train to avoid further delays. As the mission came to a close and the fake money filled the city, the woman behind the scheme shared her full story with Cid. She had come from a small village where her tribe allied with another tribe for strength. To solidify the alliance, she married the other tribe's prince, who was none other than Getten. At first, life was good, but once Getten joined the sect, he started carrying out their orders, even killing those who refused to follow the sect's beliefs. When she opposed him, he beat her nearly to death and left her for dead. Now, she sought revenge by bankrupting Garter and Getten, wanting to take everything from them. Soon after, large crowds of citizens gathered in front of the banks, worried and afraid. The banks, overwhelmed by the amount of counterfeit money in circulation, had announced that they could no longer dispense balances. Back at Shadow Garden, the girls are sitting around, worried about Cid's sudden disappearance. He didn't say anything before he left, and now they're stuck dealing with the growing financial crisis in the city. Banks are closing, businesses are shutting down, and even people with money are finding it worthless because of the collapse of the currency. The girls brainstorm ways to fix the problem. One of them suggests showing the public some gold coins, even if they're fake, to reassure them that the banks have reserves. But they quickly realize this won't solve the problem. The situation is much bigger, and they suspect that Shadow is behind the currency collapse. They believe he's doing this on purpose to execute a secret plan. Feeling guilty and believing they let him down, they start crying, realizing they weren't as effective as he wanted, which is why he distanced himself from them. Suddenly, one of the girls walks in with important news. Getten is the mastermind behind the entire operation for the Diablo sect. He had planned from the beginning to bankrupt Mitsugoshi by flooding the market with counterfeit money. The girls now understand that Shadow's actions were part of a brilliant plan to save Mitsugoshi and defeat Getten. Shadow closed the banks to prevent the fake money from overwhelming the city's economy. If he hadn't intervened, the situation would have been uncontrollable. One of the Shadow Garden girls decodes a message from Shadow, which reveals that he still wants to work with them but had to distance himself temporarily because there were too many suspicions surrounding their group. Shadow had used the time apart to gather enough real gold to cover all the fake money. As a result, it was the Diablo sect, not Mitsugoshi, that ended up losing everything. The girls also realize that Delta has been missing for a while. Just then, Delta returns, revealing that she had been helping Shadow print the counterfeit money. Meanwhile, Cid, as Shadow, tracks down Getten, having figured out that he was the mastermind behind everything. Yukime, the ruler of the White Tower, confronts Getten, reminding him that while he once saved her city, there's an evil side to him that needs to be controlled. Enraged, Getten attacks Yukime, saying he should have killed her when he had the chance. Just as Getten is about to strike, Shadow arrives and stops him. Shadow fights Getten fiercely, demanding that he reveal the truth. Getten finally admits that he once wanted to protect the city and had a lover, Yukime, but was corrupted by the Diablo sect. As Getten nears death, he asks Shadow to take care of Yukime. Shadow promises to protect her, and with that, Getten dies. The authorities then arrest the bank manager for tampering with customer balances and making people believe there was more money than there actually was. The financial crisis exposed his lies, and the bank is revealed to have no reserves. Later, Yukime is seen talking with two of her guards about her experiences with Shadow. She receives a letter from Alpha. The letter, written by Getten before he died, reveals that the Diablo sect was responsible for his downfall. After reading the letter, Yukime decides to join the Shadow Garden in their fight against the Diablo sect, realizing that Shadow has been fighting evil all along. Meanwhile, Shadow is seen digging through the ice, retrieving the real gold and legitimate money he had hidden. And that's where this video ends. Watch the next one and take care.